Hey everybody, and welcome back to my weekly reading vlog. It is now Wednesday at 2:30 in the afternoon. I know usually I try to start this vlog a little bit sooner, but honestly, I have not been feeling particularly well. I don't know what's going on. I have no idea. So we're just rolling with it. So unfortunately, I haven't updated you, but I also didn't stop reading, so I have a lot to talk about. First up is Educated by Tara Westover, which is an adult nonfiction memoir about Tara, who grew up in a fundamentalist religious family, who they're like anti-government and preppers, and they homeschooled but didn't actually really teach their children anything. And then she goes away to college and realizes she has she doesn't know very much about the world and has to educate herself. Now, that's what the description is, but this is more about Tara growing up in an abusive household and her finding her way out. And getting the vocabulary and the framework to understand what was going on in her childhood home, and obviously like trying to figure out which relationships she can keep and which maybe cut she needs to cut ties with. It is very interesting, and I really like this book, and it was also very difficult to read. I am planning on doing a full-length review. I actually already filmed it, I believe. I tried to film it. We'll see how it goes. I haven't checked the footage, so I'm not sure that it's like exactly what I want. But the intention is that I will have a full-length review put up. But it was really good. I highly recommend it. There are a ton of content warnings in this, though, like all the different kinds of domestic abuse, things that you get with domestic abuse, other than no sexual abuse. And it is domestic abuse in the framework of being a fundamentalist religious household. So, like, very specific in, like, how this abuse is perpetuated. And I also will note that there is animal abuse in this, which is very brief but very intense. So be cautious, but honestly, I very highly recommend this book. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. So then I picked up The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and this is an adult, I think speculative fiction is more what it is. But we're following our main character of Nora, and Nora's life has just kind of gone to hell, and she decides that she doesn't want to live anymore. And so we follow her as she goes into this, well, one presumes that she attempted suicide, and she goes to this place between this area that exists between the living and the dead, where there is this library, and it's the books of your life, where what would have happened if you had made slightly different choices, and Nora starts reading them. I DNF'd this book at page 24. So here's the thing. Especially given the fact that we're dealing with a very depressed person, obviously, I found the writing to be very emotionally flat. Like, I was not expecting that at all. I don't think that the writing didn't flow very well. Nora, like, as expected, she is a little bit of a wet blanket because her life sucks, right? But we don't get to know her before her life sucks, so I just couldn't make a connection with her. And then, like, I kind of have a feeling where I know where this story is going, which I'm just not interested, and I'm not gonna, if it goes the way I think it is, I'm not gonna like the themes of this particular story. And so and super petty me, but the dialogue is set off by single quotations instead of double quotations, which don't at me. I know that that's how you do it some places, but like for me, it's really difficult to see it. My brain just skips over it. And so I struggled to know it was dialogue. Anyway, clearly it did not appeal to me, so I just went ahead and DNF'd it. So now I'm currently in the middle of 3 different books. So let's start with The Space Between Worlds by Michaela Johnson. And this is an adult science fiction standalone, and we're following our main character of Kara, who is a traveler, somebody who is able to travel to alternate dimensions. And she's a great traveler because the only thing about alternate dimensions, at least that we as the readers know at this point, is that your counterpart has to be dead for you to be able to travel there. And for some reason, Kara is dead in just so many of the dimensions. Like, she can travel to almost all of them. And then one day, one of her counterparts dies, and she finds it a little bit suspicious, so she decides to investigate, and the story goes from there. I'm on page 1. I literally read like a paragraph, and then I realized what time it was last night. And I was like, I can't read this. Like, I gotta just go to bed. Even if I read a single chapter, that's not gonna be enough for me. I need to stop at this single paragraph. But obviously I will be reading more of this going forward. And then I read, well, I didn't read it. I'm in the middle of reading Walk on Earth, a Stranger by Ray Carson. This is the first book in the Gold Seer trilogy. So this trilogy is a young adult fantasy trilogy set in the Old West. And in it, we're following our main character of Leah, and she has this amazing ability to detect gold. And through circumstances, she finds herself traveling. I think it's still called the Oregon Trail. I'm not really sure, but she decides to go west to California. And the story kind of goes from there. This is my buddy read with Julie, and I'm already 75 pages in. I have read this before. I do like this story. And my thoughts so far are, I really like Ray Carson's writing. I like our main character, but I think that in general, Old West fantasy just isn't my deal. It's not that it's bad, but like, I'm just not drawn to it in any kind of way. So obviously my feelings may change as this trilogy goes on, but those are my thoughts at this particular point. And then lastly, we have Rejected Princesses by Jason Porath. And this is, I don't know how to describe it, honestly. I don't know if it's not fully nonfiction or not, because I don't think it is. But essentially, we're just taking a look at the history of a lot of women that history has overlooked, like, and having their biographies in here. Now, it's very clear that the author has taken what historical, like, looked at the historical documentation for these stories, and I like that. However, like, there's also fables and stuff mixed in, which is an interesting choice. Now, I have mentioned all this before, but just wanted to reiterate. But now I am on page 57, and one thing that I am noticing is that our author is a little bit sassy, a little bit salty about certain things, which sometimes works, I like, but sometimes I'm like, man, I wish you wouldn't, because I don't mind pointing out, hey, we don't know what happened after this particular point in this person's life, because historians are notoriously sexist, and so they just stopped writing. Like, I don't mind pointing that out, but he kind of does it in a sassy way sometimes, in which I'm like, I wish you wouldn't. Not because it bothers me terribly, but like, because I would like to give this to my children to read, but that kind of thing I just don't feel quite as comfortable with. So I am generally enjoying the stories in it. It's just I have very mixed feelings about the execution at this particular point. But that is it. Those are all of my updates. So obviously I'm going to be I'm going to keep working on Walk on Earth, a Stranger, basically just trying to make sure that I keep up with whatever speed Julie is going at. And then The Space Between Worlds and Rejected Princesses. If I could finish The Space Between Worlds and maybe Rejected Princesses by the end of the week, I think I'd be happy. I think that would put me in a really, really good place for this month and this month's TBR. But we'll see if that actually happens. But that is all I have for this update. So until next time, bye! Hey everybody, it is now Saturday night at about 8:45, so it is time to wrap up this reading vlog. So we're going to go ahead and start with Walk on Earth a Stranger by Carson. I am now on page 114, and I don't have too much more to say other than like Leah is finally like getting going on her journey, which I appreciate. And the other thing I will note that was pointed out by Julie actually is that she actually acts like a teenager. She's supposed to be 15, 16 years old, and she acts like it. Like, she is pretty smart because she's used to being self-reliant. And so she does a number of things that are good, like are smart choices to make, but she also makes mistakes that you would expect from a 15 or 16-year-old. So I do really appreciate how she is written. And I will be continuing on with that one next week. Next up, The Space Between Worlds by Michaela Johnson. Michaela. I will remember it. I swear. I looked it up. I have to remember her name. It's Michaela Johnson. Anyway, so The Space Between Worlds by Michaela Johnson, and this I am now on page 50, and it is intriguing. So definitely not the kind of book that I kind of normally go for. Not the normal characters that I like, but I am enjoying it. I do find it intriguing. The world building is interesting. We've got the setup to the story going. I mean, I'm really interested to continue on with this book, so obviously I'm going to. And then the real success for how much I've read is with Rejected Princesses. I am now on page 175, which puts me quite squarely at the halfway mark. Now, with this, generally my feelings are still the same from before, but I'm also finding that I think that the maturity rating scale that they have in this was an excellent idea, but I am unsure of how well it was executed because, like, okay, so the whole thing is that it's supposed to be like maturity level 1 is supposed to be like approximately PG. Maturity level 3 is supposed to be like PG-13, and maturity level 5 is supposed to be like R, like mature audiences, right? And either I don't know that rating system very well, or they're not good at doing it. And also, it's honestly a little difficult to kind of take something meant for movies and put it into book format, which I recognize because, like, it's just a little bit all over the place. So, like, for example, in one of the maturity level 1 stories, which is supposed to be PG-ish, there was like very brief mention of incest. Like, it was very briefly mentioned. They moved on. They didn't explain it. You can't figure it out from context clues. But I looked at it and it was just like, do you not have curious children? Because my older kid would definitely see that and be like, hey mom, what's incest? And then we'd have a very interesting conversation. And so, like, for me, I don't know that I agree with how they rated everything. So yeah. And the other thing that I'm finding is that I do like this, but I wish that I had read it sooner, because now that I've listened to the podcast Noble Blood, which it's nonfiction stories about noble, like famous noble people throughout history, some of which are covered in here. And I'm like, especially when I've read the ones where like they are in this book and also were covered by Noble Blood, I do just generally appreciate the Noble Blood version better. Which is like this, it's just completely different intended audiences and everything. So I feel bad making that comparison, but yeah. So I am enjoying it. I'm not enjoying it as much as I was hoping, and honestly, I probably should have read this all when I first found it, like a year and a half ago, because I probably would have enjoyed it more then. Still not bad. Still enjoying it, just not as much as I was hoping. So, yes, there we go. Those are everything that I read. I didn't get quite as far as I was hoping, but it's just, it's such a weird time. So we shall see. Obviously, I'm going to continue all of these books into next week. My first priority being making sure that um, I read my buddy read with Julie. Make sure that like she doesn't get terribly far ahead of me. Although I've been mostly a little bit ahead of her. And then second priority is finishing up Rejected Princesses, and then lastly is The Space Between Worlds. So that is it for this reading vlog. Please, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And until next time, guys, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!